Today's episode of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast is brought to you by King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, Bavarian Grill, and Ye Olde Butcher Shop. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, a longtime retail and repair shop for, you guessed it, clocks and jewelry. Everything from grandfather clocks to mantle clocks, wall clocks. Hey, if you just need to get the battery in your watch replaced, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered. Not only that, they are also a gold and silver exchange. So if you have any gold coins, silver coins that you're looking to trade in for cash on the spot, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered there as well. They are located at 1201 North Central Expressway, having served Plano for over 30 years. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Devin Hassan, who's the sports editor for the Mesquite News and the Rowlett Lakeshore Times, and Kendrick Johnson, who's the sports editor for the McKinney Courier-Gazette. And gentlemen, let's keep talking spring football. We're going to round out. We're finally at the end of the road. Our last two districts. We're going to conclude our spring football primer series as we continue to just take a look at kind of where our football programs are at as they're going through their respective off seasons. For this podcast, we're going to shift gears to Class 5A, take a look at a couple 5A districts. Looking at 7 5A Division 1. Now this district, man, I knew this. We were going to be talking about this district coming in, but looking at this configuration of teams, this district is all over the place. So for those who need a refresher from realignment, 7 5A Division 1 consists of McKinney North, Mesquite ISD's 2 5A schools, so Poteet and West Mesquite, Sherman, Texas High, all the way out in Texarkana, John Tyler, and Wiley East. So within those 7 teams, you have schools that are currently at least in districts 14 5A, 15 5A, 16 5A, 5 5A, and 11 6A. So you have schools that are just have very little familiarity between these 7 schools, and obviously you got to find somewhere to those East Texas schools just can't play each other, so you got to find some way to latch them on with some of the Metroplex schools, and unfortunately for programs like McKinney North, Mesquite ISD going to be a little bit more travel for this coming season, but that's that's for later on. Let's just kind of take a look at at least where McKinney North and Mesquite ISD are at in their respective off seasons. Kendrick, let's start with McKinney North, a program making the jump from 14 5A, had some success out there, made the playoffs both years. How are the Bulldogs looking right now?
The travel for them won't be as crazy. They got to go to Sherman. They got to go to make a trip out to Tyler. But considering West Mesquite come there, they got to go to Wiley East. I think if they could have asked for something, maybe skip the Tyler trip. Devon's made a time or two to Rose Stadium. I think they got off good. On the roster front, they're replacing 36 seniors, including Zach Frazier, one of the best linemen in the area, and Lamar Lucas, who's the program's second leading rusher with 3,700 plus yards behind Ronald Jones. So when you start getting in that territory, it's like, where are they going to get this running game from? In spring, they got a litany of players. They got 3 or 4 people, but for some reason, they always find somebody and they get them 1,500 yards. It's like they just grow them out there up north. But key to the offense will be how they use Brandon Frazier. He's called AKA Baby Gronk. The guy's 6'7", 230, catches everything. He's already got offers from Oklahoma State and Purdue, and he put on a show during the spring game. They had him in the slot, they had him as a wingback, they had him in tight end. They move him around. He's just a matchup nightmare for everybody. And they got Cam Constantine, who's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the area, and he'll be a 3-year starter. So he's been part of those 2 playoff runs that Matt talked about. Cam's been the trigger man. So if he gets him a running mate in the running game, they can go back to doing his own read with Frazier. But they're gonna have a lot of holes on both offense and defense, but they're a program that's used to winning and winning a playoff game last year, getting to play state champion in Hunting Park. Just cultivate that, like, hey, we're on a program on the rise.
It's impressive, though. 6'7", 320, not 230, and he's just halfway through his high school career.
And then their schedule, their non-district schedule is pretty tough. That should get them ready. You got to play the rivalry game with McKinney to kick off the MIC Stadium. That'll be official August 30th. McKinney High, McKinney North, the 2 original high schools of McKinney open the stadium. Then they play another game against Justin Northwest. Every time they play Justin Northwest, it's a shootout. Both teams have scored over 40 the last 2 years that they play, and then they play Wakeland and Rockwall Heath, 2 perennial playoff teams. So they'll be tested before they even get to this district, which in the big picture I think will help them get one of the spots. If I was going to go like this and put them, I put them at second and getting in the playoffs for the third year in a row.
Interesting.
Barring injuries, because they can't have injuries, because they won't have as much depth as they had. Last year they had a ton of depth. This year they don't.
Devin, let's take a look at then the two schools that are under your umbrella out in Mesquite, whether it's Poteet, West Mesquite. I know both these teams were, that 15-5A playoff race was just such a gauntlet. And, was it West that just barely missed at the very end of the season?
Poteet beat West head-to-head in the regular season finale. That was what the final playoff berth came down to. And real quick, because Kendrick touched on the travel thing as well. That was the first thing that jumped out to us just when we saw it. That was just one of the repercussions of splitting up Class 5A. But, if this was the same district for all the other sports, it would be more of an issue because every team would have to go home and home. Yeah. But with 6 district games, you're making 3 road trips. It's still a long way. West Mesquite to Texarkana is 340 miles round trip. But when you're doing it 3 times a year, on Friday nights, it's not that big of a deal. But I'll start with Poteet. Like I mentioned, they made the playoffs last year, knocking out their rivals. That's 7 out of 8 years in a row, or 7 out of 8 years for Poteet. What's impressive is they've won at least one playoff game every season they've made it. Yeah. They made 2 trips to the state semis, 4 trips to the regional finals. So this team is used to making the playoffs, and they're used to enjoying success while they're there. One reason for that is they test themselves early. We talked about Horns, run of Allen, Highland Park, Cedar Hill the other day in non-district. Well, Poteet has Denton Ryan, Waxahachie, Mansfield Summit, and Tyler Lee. Oh, wow. So they'll be ready to go once the new 7-5A season rolls around. They went 6-6 last year. Really were ravaged by injuries. This was a team halfway through the season. I thought to Coach Cody Groves, and he's sitting there going through his depth chart going, look, see all these moving pieces? There was just so many injuries. Coming back healthy, I think their offense has the ability to be really strong. They had they had a rotation going at quarterback to start the year last year. They ended up moving Dalton Dale into that starting role, and he kind of flourished as the year went on, got more comfortable in that role. Cam Lapton, the other guy they were using as a quarterback, moved out to wide receiver, which is where he played the previous year, and he's one of those dynamic players on the outside. But really, the player the offense revolves around is Seth McGowan. Oh, yeah. He was expected. He played as a freshman on varsity, had a couple really good games, was expected to be kind of their workhorse, kind of their focal point last year, but missed the entire first half of the season with an injury. And that's one of the things that kind of threw them into a tailspin through those early stages. He came back midway through, still rushed for more than 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, but again, was never 100%. He's a kid that's got offers from all over the country. Now that he's fully healthy, look for him to really shine this year.
And how about West Mesquite? What do you make of the Wranglers so far in their progress?
West Mesquite has some question marks on both sides of the ball. They replaced a couple of 3-year starters, Curtis Williams in the backfield, Connor Neal at quarterback. Have a couple impressive kids at the skill positions. Dylan Wright, which was one of our interview features a couple weeks ago, is a guy that really broke onto the scene last year. Great height, great athleticism. I sat there and watched him put on a dunk show during basketball season in the middle of the game. He had caught 32 passes for 545 yards last year without even being the main go-to guy. So if they can find a quarterback, whether that's Neil Johnson, whether that's somebody else that can get him the ball, he's got the ability to make big plays. And one guy to really keep an eye on is Ty Jordan, the running back. He's a track guy. He was a regional qualifier in track. He backed up Curtis Williams last year. So Curtis Williams was the main guy, but he still averaged better than 7 yards a carry, rushed for 777 yards as a sophomore. So now as the featured guy, I think he's really got the tools to be that guy they can turn to.
Now, I'm looking at just the, obviously those are the 3 teams that we cover primarily, but there's still some familiarity with some of these other schools in the district. And you, Devin, you've seen, you had to cover John Tyler, just by proxy with them being in the same district as the other Mesquite ISD schools in 6A. With them making the drop down to 5A, just what kind of, how big an impact is that, could that potentially have on this district with John Tyler in the mix now?
They've fluctuated back and forth between the top 2 classifications for a while. Last year they went 5-5, missed the playoffs the first time since 2008, but they were kind of bit by the injury bug a little bit. They also happen to be in one of the toughest 6A districts in the state. They barely missed the cutoff line. So just simply by going by enrollment and looking at what they had last year, that means they're going to probably have the depth advantage on pretty much every team they play. John Tyler's always had great athleticism. They return a lot of their skilled kids. They always had big guys on defense. That was one of their fortes when they were in 11-6A last year. So, they were already talking about potentially making a state championship run before they dropped down. in 6A. So if they have that kind of confidence, again, a lot of this is fans, a lot of this is players. This is not the coaching staff. This is not Rickland Holmes coming out and saying this. But if they have that kind of confidence in 6A, then I'm sure that's just magnified, dropping down to 5A.
What kind of expectations do you guys have for this district? Just the more I look over just this list here, it does feel like
somebody can make a run. I think you can, just by getting in with the talent they got in this particular district. I'm gonna say it's an easy gimme, but they can get through. Somebody wins one of those first 2 games, they can get the run. They get the right matchup because those teams in West Texas, this is not West Texas, but in Central Texas, will not be able to match up with them this year because they were so top heavy this past year. A lot of those schools are down. So I like the matchups in the quarterfinals. Like this past year, it did not work out. It's like wouldn't you say it flipped? It should flip on paper.
And I'm curious to see how Texas High fares. Texas High has been a perennial playoff team. 16 of the last 17 years they made the playoffs, but they haven't won in the playoffs since 2006.
How long are they trying to make the President's Grove though?
So that's what I'm saying. Is that is their playoff streak a product of being in a weaker district that hasn't translated into the playoffs? Although they did take Highland Park to 56-49 last year in the first round. But again, the fact speaks for itself that since 2006 they haven't made it out the first round. So can you chalk it up to a weak district? Possibly. So let's see what happens when they are in a stronger district with the Mesquite schools, with McKinney North, with John Tyler.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's one thing. I looked at the region and stuff. Somebody could finish third in this district and go to a state semifinal real easily, depending on how the matchups go. But I don't want to see this new. I forget the number.
7-5A, Division 1, 7-5A D1.
Been drilling 14-5A for the last 2 years.
And even Wiley East, a program that was. Obviously they obviously felt the brunt of losing Benjamin last year. Had a down year, but even still, there's plenty of pedigree and tradition there in their short time span. So that's a cursory look at District 7-5A Division 1, I should say, because we're about to talk about 7-5A Division 2, and Lord knows that's not going to get confusing at any point in time this season. But that's just a cursory look at what 7-5A D1 has to offer. For our fast forward rewind student athlete spotlight, we're actually going to kick it back up to Class 6A and kick it to the very top. I mean, the biggest high school in the state, one of the biggest in the country, and that is out at Allen, where Kendrick was just at. Kendrick swung by Allen to chat with their stud wide receiver Theo Wease, top receiver in the state, top receiver in the country. I mean, just no matter the outlet, this kid's a bona fide 5-star prospect. And Kendrick chatted with Theo Wease on his offseason, how the Eagles are coming along as they begin to defend their Class 5A Division 1 state championship, and we will see what Theo had to say after a word from this sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now. Everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
This week we make our final stop on the Fast Forward Rewind tour of the spring football season with the state champions, one of the best receivers in the nation, #1 receiver in the state of Texas, Theo Wease. Theo, how has anything changed since y'all got the state title? Just same business as usual to get another one?
It's really just the same business. We try not to talk about last year as much. We're trying to focus on this summer and getting prepared for the fall.
Give some insight into the intenseness that y'all had this spring to ramp up to repeat.
This spring we were real big on building a bond, because if you got a bond with your team, then it's unbreakable. Y'all can be unstoppable. So we were just working on building our brotherhood.
Of course, Allen's the city of champions. Got champion for y'all on the football field, the basketball court, and the wrestling ring. Do y'all feel that pressure to live up to that standard?
We always got a target on our back. It's been like that since middle school. We're kind of used to it, and we actually like it. We actually like it.
What about this particular group? Because one thing to talk about winning titles, the fact that y'all won, y'all draw confidence on, y'all know what it takes when it gets to be November and December, and every game counts, every play counts. Y'all know what to do to thrive in that setting. Does that kind of give y'all a little extra confidence?
Yeah, it gives us a lot of confidence, and then our coaches, they play a real big part. Because they're not making the plays or whatever, but they put us in the situations definitely to make the plays that we do.
Coach, we know y'all play anybody, any place, anywhere. And y'all looking forward to that new district, getting to Prosper and Jesuit, seeing a couple teams you hadn't seen in a while?
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Give us some insight to how this spring will get y'all when y'all get to come back in August to hit the ground running.
Well, yeah, so just like I was saying, we building our brotherhood, because just being tight with your teammates is definitely a big part because, this is a team sport. And then this summer is going to carry on. We're going to work hard all summer, and we're going to be ready in the fall.
What's some wrinkles to your game that we might see that we didn't see last year?
I'll probably be a lot more vocal on the field and on the sideline, and then probably just a lot of more run after the catch.
What y'all do differently during the playoffs that y'all didn't do during the regular season? Because, of course, you had a good season, but you definitely showed out in the playoffs. It seemed like they went to you a lot more during the playoffs than they did in the regular season. Was that by design or just kind of like big players making big plays in big moments?
It was probably just that, big players making big plays in big moments. My coaches, that's just the game. You never know how the game is going to go, especially at receiver, because you never know if the ball is, is going to be wet or windy. You never know. But I don't even think about that as much. I just take advantage of my opportunities.
Going through that magical ride, what was a game or a moment you like, hey, we can actually win this state title? Or you're like, I know our team's good enough to get that trophy. Was there a game or a moment leading up to that before y'all got to state that you knew?
Spring ball, the spring before the season, I was like, yeah, we look real nice. I think we can go get it.
On offense, do you think y'all be throwing more for some fact you miss somebody like Brock? That's like the all-time leading rusher, best season in Allen history. How do you find somebody to replace that 2,100 yards? Or y'all just going to have to be more aggressive and throw the ball more?
We might switch up our game plan. You never know. But we got a good running back, Andrew Henry. He's pretty good. He's not like a Brock, but he's definitely going to help.
When somebody tells you it's all about the A, not about the team, what do you think about that when you hear that mantra?
That's kind of backwards to us because it is all about the A, but it's definitely about the team first.
And how does that help y'all be consistent program where y'all winning 12, 13 games a year?
It helps us be consistent because you got somebody that got your back, so you just feel comfortable going out there. You got your teammates grinding for you. It's just a blessing.
People talk about your offense. Of course, you see that defense every day in practice. How's that defense looking this spring? They're
looking real good. We got a lot of talent on the offensive side, and the defense is definitely they're definitely keeping up with us.
Is there anybody in your non-district schedule that you're looking to face in?
I'm really just looking forward to all the games. I'm excited. Senior season.
How big a deal is to have that built in? Like a lot of people have home field advantages, but y'all home field advantage is unique. The fact that it's like a mini college game, and every Friday, Eagle Stadium is packed. How's it feel to be playing for that many people already? I know you're going to Oklahoma. You're going to be playing for 85,000, but just kind of get an appetizer for that here in high school.
It's an honor, honestly. The fans are great. That's really why we're so successful. It's really the fans and the people in the city.
With so much got going on, you're about to be a senior, trying to repeat this title. How's it feel to have that college decision out the way and that pressure off your shoulder, knowing that you're going to be riding up to Norman when the season's over with?
It feels great because now I can just focus on my team and just focus on getting everybody better.
Was that by design to get the decision out the way, or just kind of happened that way?
Yeah, that was the plan. But with recruitment, you never know how it's going to go. But I'm glad I got it out the way.
Well, individually, what are you going to since you're off the campus or you got your school picked out? What are you going to do individually to come back a better player?
I'm gonna just work on all aspects of my game, getting in and out of my breaks, speed, and definitely my leadership skills.
What's been the best special thing about just being a student here with all the state titles? What y'all did, y'all kind of got started the momentum, wrestling took it to another level, and then basketball pulled it off. What's the mentality for the Allen students like? That's pretty cool. 3 state titles in 1 year.
Yeah, it's cool because when you have friends that are in all the sports, like I got some friends on the basketball team and on the wrestling team. It's cool because you just see your friends succeeding, so you're all succeeding together, so you know that y'all all got the same plan. So yeah, it's real fun.
How do y'all that bond that everybody supports you? Like, I saw you at basketball games this year, and I see some of the wrestling people and stuff. Everybody at y'all games. Yeah. Is that just kind of the part of the Allen culture being a student here?
Yeah, that's definitely Allen culture. We support every sport. That's what it is.
And being, I know y'all in high school, but how's it feel to have this spotlight, like kind of everything y'all do? It's kind of like y'all already in college, so to speak. Every move y'all make is already everybody kind of looks and it's magnified because of the school y'all go to and what y'all do on the field. Is that adding any pressure to something y'all just gotten used to over the years?
It was a little pressure at first, but our coaches are real good at telling us, like don't be on social media that much and just stay off your phone, just stay to the team. So that helped a lot.
How much that foundation they give y'all help y'all on Friday nights? Cause like basically I ran like a college program.
Yeah, definitely. Our coaches day in and day out watching film. They're up here all the time, all night. They come in early in the morning, the last ones to leave. They definitely put their heart into it.
Who's somebody's been a mentor for you that's helped you get to this level on a personal? Somebody that maybe when you were older receiver, or somebody that's in college already?
Probably my parents, definitely. Yeah, my parents definitely are my mentors.
Gotcha. So we're gonna see a lot more vocal Theo Wease next year. 'Cause I know you're a pretty quiet guy. You just catch your touchdowns and go about your business. So.
Yes, sir. You're gonna see a lot more vocal.
Did you give him a little sample during spring practice?
Yes, sir.
And when you walk around campus, what's the reception to y'all that they might kind of like see y'all like what y'all represent so much? Is that pretty cool? The fact that people kind of look up to y'all, even though y'all are still in high school.
I mean, yeah, it is, but we're still high school kids, so people don't really look at us too much different. We still go to class with them every day.
Are you excited about knowing as soon as the season's done with it, you're gonna be heading to Norman? Or you already got your mind made up?
I'm really just excited for the season first, and then when that time comes, when I enroll to Norman, I'll be ready for that too.
That's a wrap from Allen, City of Champions. Theo Wease telling us the deal, what to look for the Allen Eagles, who try to make it 5-time state champions.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, looking for that 6th state title.
Thanks again to Theo Wease for taking the time to chat with Kendrick for the Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight. So in the meantime, we have done a wholesale change here. We've got Brian Murphy, who's the sports editor for the Frisco Enterprise, Little Elm Journal, and Salina Record, as well as Taylor Ragland, who writes sports for the Plano Star-Courier, Allen American, and Lake City Sun. And we are finally at the end of the road, our last spring football primer, and we are going to round this out with a look at another 7-5A, and that is the Division II 7-5A, where all these smaller schools are at. This district, much like 7-5A Division I, a very unique configuration. You have Denison, Denton-Braswell, the four smallest Frisco ISD schools, that being Frisco High, Lebanon Trail, Memorial, and Reedy, and then you have Lake Dallas, Lovejoy, and Princeton. So much like I rolled off the districts for the 7-5A D1, you have teams right now in this of this 7-5A D2 configuration that are from districts 5-5A, 13-5A, 14-5A, 15-5A, and 7-4A. So once again, much like that, you have schools with next to no familiarity with each other, so there's not a whole lot to really work from as far as trying to kind of gauge what this district might hold. Even in the case of Frisco ISD, you've got two programs that are going to be playing varsity football for the very first time this season. That's probably a good spot to start. What kind of expectations should people have for Memorial and Lebanon Trail heading into this season?
Don't go in with too high of expectations. Yeah. Look at Independence and Reedy in the recent years when they didn't have seniors in their first year. Mm-hmm. They had won 2 games and 3 games respectively. Don't expect too much from Memorial. Very, very first season as a football program. Lebanon Trail, they had a JV last year. Did well. They won a couple district games and whatnot against some other area foes, but neither Lebanon Trail or Memorial will have seniors, and that's huge.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Football, that matters the most, to have those older upperclassmen to lead the way. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. If you don't have that, it's going to be a long first year.
With Frisco High, the curious case of Frisco High, because I've been at the paper for almost a decade now, and it just used to be death taxes and Frisco High football making the playoffs, grinding their way with that wing tier, whatever it is they run out there, and then but since then, this is kind of a symptom of having so many schools in Frisco, is that when you build another school, is that it kind of picks apart from the student bodies from some of the other ones, and it seems like Frisco High now, which is is the original, and it's now one of the smallest high schools in Frisco. It is tied with Memorial Trail with the smallest enrollment in Frisco ISD,
and they have seniors. So
and they have seniors,
really saying something.
And then you saw last year was just a rough year on all fronts for the Raccoons. 0-10. 0-10. I don't know. What do we make of just kind of the Raccoons and where they're at right now in their offseason?
Before that, they were 10-4, 9-4, 9-4, 8-3, 8-3, and then 0-10. Huge drop off. They lose majority of their players, to Reedy and Lebanon Trail and the surrounding Frisco schools, it's tough to gauge, but I think them being in this new district will suit them very well. Against these smaller schools, against Memorial and Lebanon Trail, they'll be able to get, maybe potentially, not calling it now, but some easy wins, unlike last year when they're going against Wakeland and Centennial and Lone Star, just getting beaten pretty bad by really, really good 5A programs.
You mentioned them, losing some kids to Reedy, and it's very ironic because Reedy which was in the same spot that Lebanon Trail and Memorial are in not too long ago, and Reedy just skyrocketed last year. One of the more impressive stories in just in the area, period, was just Reedy's emergence as this powerhouse, finishing second place in 13 5A.
Yeah, their only district loss was to Lone Star, who was state ranked, one of the best teams in the entire state. They go from 3-7 to 9-2. They look really, really good. Every day I follow their Reedy football Twitter account. Almost every day I see a new tweet saying, well, thank you for such and such college, such and such school, such and such school for coming out to.
So they're becoming a destination now.
It's some big D1 schools.
Colleges are taking note.
Oh yeah, and there's a few recruits. I talked to Chad Cole yesterday. Actually, he said they're looking at Nolan Matthews a lot. 6'6". He was their wideout last year. He was kind of like their ex wideout. They're going to move him to tight end. 6'6", 240. He's a stud on the basketball team also. And then Isaiah Floyd, a center. And they said he's a really smart kid, so he's getting offers. Not just because he's good at football, but just because he's a really smart guy too. They moved him from guard to center, so he's getting some big recruits. And then it also helps to have your quarterback back. Yeah. And Josh Foskey, he started as a sophomore, started last year as a junior, and he thrived. He had a great junior year. He's also starting third baseman on the baseball team. He's just a stud. Kind of reminds me of like Ryan Depperschmidt at Lake Dallas. Kind of does it all for many programs.
That's a good way to transition then over to Lake Dallas, one of the other schools in this district. And one of the few matchups that we got to see last year between two teams that are going to be in this district. Lake Dallas and Reedy threw down in the first round. Sounds like it was a spectacular game. Lake Dallas got the upper hand by what was it, like 2-3 points? Yeah. A game that
37-35.
Something to that tune. I mean, it was a great game.
34. Yeah.
And two teams that should be pretty evenly stocked for the rematch, and I think that actually might be the district opener for their respective programs.
It is. Yeah, it is.
So you'll get that game right out of the gates.
As Coach Cole also mentioned, he's like, man, we start off with a really tough district opening schedule because they just get 2 non-district games, and then they got to play Lake Dallas and Denison, who is a team that Chad Cole said could be a problem in District 7 5A. So watch out for them. And another thing he brought up was they'll actually get to travel. Last year, they played all of their district games in 3 different stadiums, just miles away. This year, they're going to be able to go to Denison, go to Lake Dallas, go to Lovejoy, all these other, cities, and they get to venture out and get a little bit more of that experience. So when it comes playoff time, they go to a different venue. Maybe they're not so shocked and unprepared.
That is one little subplot to this, that this is a 9-team district. There's actually 3 of the 4 districts in Region 2 in 7 5A, D2 are 9-team districts, and that means you only get those 2 non-district games, so you don't have a ton of time to really kind of prepare, especially if you're, in the case of Lake Dallas and Reedy, if you have a district opener that could potentially be for the district title when all's said and done. I mean, that's you only have 2 chances to really, make sure you've got got everything in gear.
And Lake Dallas didn't do spring ball this year. Correct?
That's right. That's kind of a good transition to kind of how Lake Dallas is approaching this off season, and just how it sounds like that this new district and having those 9 teams plus Lake Dallas does have a bit of experience back that kind of made the Falcons kind of recalibrate the way that they wanted to approach this off season. For the first time under head coach Mike Young, Lake Dallas opted to forego spring ball, and I've talked a little bit about that last week when ironically enough discussing the Carrollton Farmers Branch and whatnot, but that's just kind of a different school of thought and trying out something new. And what it'll do is it'll give Lake Dallas, they'll start a week earlier in August. They'll start on August 6th instead of August 13th, and they'll get a second scrimmage. They'll scrimmage Bishop Dunn and Azle. So I think that was a real big coup for kind of wanting to shift their approach. And like Coach Young said, Lake Dallas has a lot back, so they felt like there was enough experience to where they're a bit further ahead than they otherwise would have been if they were a program that graduated a massive senior class. So they were able to go through the spring not having to really focus so much on just installing base stuff. They're able to get a little bit more complex with their teachings, and they were able to, even though they said they didn't have spring ball, so they couldn't they couldn't put on pads, no contact or anything like that, but even just during their athletics period, just during school hours, he said they got a lot done. He was really impressed, just as far as kind of gauging what you're able to accomplish with spring practices versus not having them. I think it was kind of a pleasant surprise that they were still still able to accomplish so much just during that athletics period. Lake Dallas should be pretty good this year. I mean, they were, this was a team that last year in 14-5A, I mean, they finished second in the district. They missed the playoffs the year before, finished fifth. They were able to get to the second round this past season, and they're, they've got 15 starters back. They're pretty well stocked on offense between, quarterback with Ryan Depperschmidt, who you mentioned earlier, Brian. Their lead running back, Kylie Smith, is back. Their lead receiver, Brandon Engel's back. They have, just off of last season alone, they have 21 of 21 passing touchdowns back. They have 20 of 24 rushing touchdowns back, and 11 of 21 receiving touchdowns back. So a big chunk of their offensive production is already stocked. Defensively, they returned 6 of their top 8 tacklers, led by Jared Fenley and Daryl Miner. Their top 2 sack leaders, D.L. Roberson and Talenio Evans. So I mean, the Falcons, I think expectations are pretty high for the Falcons coming into this season. If anything, it'll just be a sigh of relief for them to not be in a district where they're the smallest school. They're only the second smallest school in 7-5 AD2 behind Princeton, because Lake Dallas, just from an enrollment standpoint, was just dwarfed by everybody in District 14-5A. So yeah, the Falcons, I think them, Reedy, and another school that I think we can now segue to, Taylor, Lovejoy, are teams that at least preliminary look, I should say.
Say that 5 times fast. Yeah.
Preliminary look. And they could be, in that district title conversation. So let's just let's take a look at the Leopards. One of the better stories last year. A team that had the rare 0-5 start to 5-5, made the playoffs, had to mount and was kind of a foreshadowing for just how Lovejoy boys athletics in general were going to go. You've been talking to Coach Ford recently. Just how are the Leopards looking right now?
Well, I think obviously the big focus in the spring is that kind of tale of 2 seasons they had last year and avoiding that this year. They had some injuries that obviously contributed. You don't go 0-5, when you're a good program and a solid football team without some of that stuff and some unlucky things happening. But still, his focus is, we can't go out and go 0-5 again and then have to fight and scratch and claw our way back into the playoffs. So I think consistency is a big thing, and they have a couple key returners that'll help with that. But obviously, the biggest glaring loss is the best named linebacker.
The most aptly named linebacker that you could think of.
And SEC-bound Bumper Pool, who they will no longer have. So that's a big identity loss, I think, for their defense. Not only in production and tackles and actual on-field things, but just kind of a defensive leader and identity. So they're going to have to find. It's a classic case of you don't replace a guy like that with one person. Yeah. You ask your entire linebacker core to step up. But they have gotten a good spring. Coach Ford said out of Coleman Christensen, who will be kind of a defensive leader for sure, and not step into the role of Bumper Pool, obviously, because it's a guy that you don't just assume the mantle like that. But who has proven a leader and had a good couple of years, I think, and maybe even been overshadowed a little bit by Bumper because he's such a talent. So they'll turn to him. But as far as key returners, they get Carson Collins back at quarterback, which is a huge deal. He played, Coach Ford said that it wasn't really widely known, but he played pretty much the back half of last year with a knee injury, underwent off-season surgery, and looks good by all accounts this spring as far as health, and better by all accounts as far as leadership and intangibles and running the offense. So they'll look to basically just be more consistent and keep some guys healthy, keep Collins healthy under center, get that linebacker core to kind of come together as a group and replace the production lost by Poole and turn to some other key returners they have. But like I said, really the foundation is there, and the consistency is kind of the focus, and obviously not starting 0-5. That's never ideal. So their focus is to come out strong, and I think they've set up maybe their non-district slate and all that kind of stuff to get rolling early.
We talked about Bumper Poole and his impact on defense. He also assumed a very key role for their offense as last season went along. He actually finished as their second leading rusher. He averaged 6.5 yards, tied for the team lead in rushing touchdowns with 6. Lovejoy does have their leading rusher though back, Jahi Rainey.
Right,
and that should
another key returner on offense. They really shouldn't have any problems on offense, especially at the key skill positions. So I think it's going to be just about staying healthy. Obviously that's every team. You can't have guys go down and key guys and things like that, but it sounds like they're pretty confident that Collins has kind of figured out whatever was going on with his knee and should be good to go.
Yeah, the Leopards were a completely different team without Collins and Rainey. When I saw them play against Wakeland in non-district, it was like the third game of the year, and they looked. It was a rough game for them without their 2 starters on offense. They couldn't get anything going on offense. So that's that's two key guys right there for them.
And I'm, just looking at some of the other schools that we don't necessarily, we don't cover them, and I've never actually seen them up close and in person. But schools like Denison won 8 games last year. That can't be overlooked as they make this move. And even a school like Princeton that's making the jump up from 4A to 5A. Granted, it's just 7-on-7, so you want to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. But that was one of, I was out shooting some photos at an SQT out in Grapevine, a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the more impressive teams that I saw out there was Princeton. And I was, just watching them as they just kind of ran up and down the field on Rowlett, a 6A program. It was kind of eye-opening just to see Princeton. And I don't know, Princeton's passing game might have a little bit more, zip to it than we realized at this time. But what kind of expectations do you guys have for this district right now? Still very early on, in the spring and whatnot. But what expectations do you guys have for this district?
Still talking about Princeton, I can't wait to see what they do in this district because they played Salina the last 2 years. And when Salina was really, really good 2 years ago, they beat them the very first game of the year, and Salina didn't like that. They weren't expecting that.
I can't imagine they would.
Because Salina rarely loses,
yeah.
And they got revenge on them in week 1 last year in a close one-score game. So if they're giving powerhouse like Salina some problems, who knows, against these other smaller schools in 5A, they can be a surprise team and maybe finish top 2, maybe top 3. But I still think this is Reedy's district. Just seeing what they did last year, and just, they have so many guys coming back. They have the core of their team. They just look so good, and their district. I don't want to say it gets easier, but they're not going against Lone Star and Whatland and whatnot. So, and they'll have a couple games against Lebanon Trail, Memorial, stuff like that. So I think this is Reedy's district to lose, but we'll see.
You do realize that Lake Dallas did beat them last time they played.
They did.
And they return a lot of players from that team. That district opener is going to be very telling for just kind of how that what pretends in 7-5A Division II. Taylor, do you have any initial impressions just kind of looking at this district for the the first time? And
I think you alluded to it earlier. I think that Reedy and Lake Dallas and Lovejoy are kind of the class of the district, if you want to call it that, with potentially Princeton and Denison mixed in to that kind of a 5-team group that you should see the playoff teams come out of. I think that Lake Dallas and Lovejoy return a lot of pieces, and they're pretty mature. And Lovejoy, that's another thing Coach Ford said, just as far as when you go through something like that and you go 0-5 and then you come back and make the playoffs. That's a big, teachable moment, building block, whatever cliche you want to throw out there. It's a big moment for them to kind of learn how to battle through adversity. So if they get not an easier season, but if they have, Collin stays healthy and Rainey stays healthy and they don't have to climb that mountain so much, then maybe for them it feels almost like, well, of course we can do this because look what we did last year. So I think that group of 3 at the top with Lake Dallas and Lovejoy and Reedy is probably where I would see the district champion coming from. But who knows? I mean, maybe there's a surprise team. I think already in my 3.5 months on the job, I've learned not to lean too hard on any one prediction because covering 6A has taught me that just about anything can happen. So who knows? But I think that group of 3 teams is probably where you'll see the 7-5A champion come from.
That's a look at District 7-5A Division II. Gentlemen, we did it. We got all of our districts. Spring primers on all of them. We finally reached the end of the finish line. That'll just about do it for this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. Brian, Taylor, appreciate y'all for tagging along. Ditto to Kendrick and Devin. Folks, appreciate y'all for checking this out as well as all of the other previous spring football primers. Like I said, we're going to tackle this stuff in much greater detail once we get to August, once fall practices begin. So make sure y'all are checking that out. We're also going to be doing podcasts over the summer. Even though school's out, we're going to still find some way to fill this podcast airspace. So we'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. Appreciate y'all for checking this out. Y'all enjoy the rest of your week. We will talk to y'all later. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast, brought to you by Yield Butcher Shop, a meat market and burger joint based in Plano. It's summertime, folks. The temperatures are going to start heating up, and what a better way to break into that summer heat than to break out the grill, do some barbecuing. Well, guess what? Yield Butcher Shop has you covered. They can help you with everything from catering, grilling, barbecuing, or any special occasion, serving the finest cuts of meat from everyday to exotics. They are located at 811 East 15th Street in Plano, open Tuesday through Saturday. A smoking good time since 1974, Ye Olde Butcher Shop.